Hey, everybody. Before we get started, I want to thank my friends at Hatch for producing this episode. You can get unlimited podcast editing and strategy for one flat rate by visiting hatch.fm. All right, let's get into the show. Welcome to Distribution First, the show where we flip content marketing on its head and focus on what happens after you hit publish. Each week, I share playbooks, motivations, stories, and strategies to help you repurpose and distribute your content because you deserve to get the most out of everything you create. When it comes to building a content strategy, there is one thing I want you to know. You do not need to have a complex, complicated content strategy in order to be successful. In fact, that's what I think most people get wrong is they think they need to have a massive content strategy with a bunch of different channels and content types and ideas and things they're going to make and how do we tie them all together. And what ends up happening is you actually end up creating more of a mess than you end up creating an actual system. And you're probably going to hear different advice depending on who you ask and what you should do. Some people are going to tell you to lean on SEO. Some people are going to say, oh, you need to be on TikTok. Some people are going to tell you to build a brand. Other people are going to tell you to capture demand. And it's hard to keep it all straight. And so that's why I'm a huge believer in simplicity and in systems. And so today I want to talk through 3 types of content that I use to build my personal strategy. This is the type of content that I've used to build content strategies at other companies as well. And this is something you can use that can literally build out your entire content calendar so you know what's coming every quarter, every month, every week, and even every day, depending on how tightly you want to get down into it. So today I want to walk you through what I call the 3C content method. Let's get into it. All right, so the 3C content method. What the heck is the 3C content method? The 3C content method is pretty simple. It's 3 C's that equal up all the content that you need to create in any given quarter. So you want to think of this as a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, you have Cornerstone content. This is the type of content that you create every single quarter, every single half a year, once a year. These are the big content initiatives that you're putting on your plate. Think of things like original research. Think of things like surveys, like a new template, a new piece of original research, something big that you're spending a core amount of time on. And honestly, it's something that you should be creating other content off of throughout the rest of the year. And we'll get into that. Hey everyone, let me ask you a quick question. Are you creating too much content without actually having a plan to get that in front of your audience? Well, this episode is brought to you by Content Repurposing Roadmap. This is my flagship course where I take you step by step through my content repurposing strategy. You'll get proven systems, real life examples, and fill in the blank templates to help you get started. If you want to get more out of every piece of content you're creating, you can enroll for this course at contentrepurposingroadmap.com. Number 2 is core content. This is the monthly and weekly content. This is really core content is at the heart of most content strategies. These are things like blogs. These are things like YouTube videos. These are things like podcast episodes, things that you are using every single week and every single month to build out your strategy. It's not a huge initiative. It's not something too crazy, but it's actually something that you're using to build up your content strategy every single week. And then the third is cut content. This is pretty self-explanatory, hopefully, but cut content is just the daily content that you are cutting up off of the other things. So think of email newsletters could be a variation of cut content. A social video could be a type of cut content. Any of those type of things that you're creating every single day that you're trying to get out in front of your audience on the platforms where they're at, that's cut content. Let's drill into each of these a little bit more and give you a little bit more of the background behind them. So like I said, this Cornerstone, this is the stuff that sits at the top of the pyramid. And these are the things you should be creating at least once a year. If you do it right, this is the type of content that can fuel your entire content engine throughout an entire year. So think of if you did a piece of original research and maybe you took proprietary data out of your software and you have a report that's built off of that. Maybe you worked with a partner or a series of partners to come up with industry benchmarks or data sets, and you want to build a nice report or a dashboard and share that. That's the type of stuff that you can create not only once at any given point in the year, but then ultimately what you want is to be able to create lots of content coming off of that. You want to be able to, my friend Dozy threw this out there the other day, you want to be able to throw the rock into the pond and let all the ripples come off of that. You don't want to throw that rock in the pond and let that thing just sink down to the bottom and sit. You want to create this cornerstone piece of content that you can pull off into a million different ways. And so many brands have created cornerstone pieces of content that go nowhere. Like I said, you spend all this time, all this energy, all this effort to be able to build this thing up, and you end up not doing anything with it. And it just sits there on the shelf for the rest of the year until somebody says, oh yeah, are we doing that again? And you end up doing it again for round 2. And so what you want to do is actually think through before you go and create that. What are the other pieces of content that we can create off of this? So if you're planning on doing a big survey to your audience, if you're planning on doing a big piece of original research, if you have an event coming up, if you're doing a course this year, what are the other pieces of content that you can do and pull off of that? That's the distribution first mindset that we've been talking about, and being able to create something that not only your audience can use right now, but something that your audience can use down the road as well. Because the reason you want to cut that up is so it's always top of mind in front of your audience's attention. You want, just because you made it in April, you still want to be talking about that in November. And by cutting that up, you're able to do that. The next 2 pieces of content, like I talked about, can be taken out of Cornerstone content, or you can just create it on your own. And so, like I said, the next type in the pyramid is core content. And these are things, like I mentioned, the podcasts, the webinars, the videos, the blogs. These are the things that are really running your engine. And what I would do if I were you is think through, how many of these core pieces of content are we trying to do right now? Because that's another trap that people fall in and that companies fall in, is trying to do too many pieces of core content at once. I've been in the situation before where you're trying to, as a content person, manage blog posts, maybe multiple blog posts a week. You're trying to manage a podcast. You're trying to manage webinars, product webinars, other things. Oh, and we're going to try to pull out a YouTube channel because we know we should be there too. When you try to pile all those things together, none of them are really going to run that well, especially if you're on a small team. So I would suggest picking 1 or 2 and honestly using a repurposing strategy to get the most out of those. So if you're going to do a podcast, maybe repurpose that podcast episode into a video. Maybe repurpose that podcast episode into a blog post. If you're doing blogs, same thing, repurpose it to a video script, repurpose it into a podcast. So you're not having to do so much heavy lifting, but you can still get a lot of elements out of your core content. And the final thing is cut content. So like I said, this is all the micro content. These are all the little pieces that you want to be able to create. And the whole reason you create cut content is to get in front of your audience. Your audience has so many other things going on in their life that you and your business are never going to be top of mind. I guarantee you that. If you think through your buying habits, you are not worried about what X, Y, and Z company is doing on X, Y, and Z day, even if you like that company. What you're worried about is, how do I get my job done? How do I do this? I got to pick up my kids. I got to do that. That's the stuff you're worried about. In order to actually get influence and continually be top of mind in front of your audience, you need one thing. And that one thing is attention. You need to be able to get the attention of your audience. And you need to be able to do that every single day. And that's why cut content comes in, because you can't guarantee that somebody read your full report that you put out. You can't guarantee that they read the blog post or the podcast episode that you did on that. And you can't even guarantee that they saw the one video clip that you put on social. And so that's why you need to do these things over and over and do them consistently, again, so you can maximize the amount of content you have and maximize the reach that your content has. So hopefully this was helpful in terms of the 3C method, in terms of how you can use it, how I use it. Hopefully you see that put out in my content all the time between my newsletter and this podcast and my social feed. If you have questions, if you want to figure out how you could do this for yourself, feel free to shoot me a DM on LinkedIn or reach out at hello@justinsimon.co. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Distribution First, and thank you for listening all the way through. I appreciate you so so much. And I hope you're able to apply what you learned in this episode one way or another into your content strategy as well. Speaking of strategy, we have a lot of things going on this year that are going to help you build your brand, 10x your content, and transform the way you do content marketing. Make sure to subscribe to the show and sign up for my newsletter at justinsimon.co so you don't miss a thing. I look forward to serving you in the next episode as well. And until then, take care, and I'll see you next time.